they almost lost all data.
Police called us and we said,
someone was phishing quite literally for your account details.
Why are you selling fake watches?
Turns out this email was fake, so they were eventually writing off almost €500,000.
I had to pay for the lawyer quite a lot of money, although it was not my fault.
Oh my god, my Google account got hacked.
The smartphone is our kryptonite.
Wow, this was the fix?
Could the hacker use your computer for mining?
You are never safe.
Hello to the next episode of masterful.info podcast. Today is a special topic about internet security. Chris, could you tell me please, why is it an important topic and whom is it important for?
So this is a really important topic because internet security affects your business. If you want to believe it or not, it affects also all businesses of all sizes.
Could you give a few examples? I think our listeners, they don't have huge corporations and they might think like, oh, that's more relevant for Sony, for even like middle-sized companies that might be hacked. But imagine you are one solopreneur, and how relevant, how important is internet security for a solo entrepreneur?
If you're a solo entrepreneur, and your business is based on internet in one way or another, which almost every company is, because at least you have like an email address, you have a Facebook account, you're using a phone, which is always connected or almost always connected to the internet. So it starts low. So it can be like, it can be the security of your email account for if you're a small solo entrepreneur having some small online shop. It can also affect your big company on a different scale. And it's always like, it can be different threats. Like, let's say the most obvious one is the financial risk. If you're getting hacked and in one way or another, you are depending on the tools you're using, which are not working anymore for you, you're basically pressing pause on your business, right? So this is one thing which is affecting any size of a company.
Yeah, I remember many years ago, our website was down and our email address was down, but it was not because of hacking, because of some other issues, but it was a big challenge for us. Our clients and our partner companies, they were calling us and were curious if we run out of business. So it can be a huge image destruction. For me, I also was trying different tools recently. One of those tools was initially really great, but then they had like some errors, like 404 error pages. And that was it for me. I said, okay, if a software as a service company is not able even like have a proper website, how am I supposed to trust this kind of company?
Absolutely. I fully agree. This is really a bad reputation. If you're getting hacked, or it's not even necessarily needs to be hacked, your business. It can be like you forgot to pay your service provider. And like you said back then, when we had this one issue was basically a single point of failure in our company from a technical point of view. Yeah, people start asking like, is this another rug pull? Is this like an exit scam of this company? Are they gone? Are they out of money? What is happening here? So this is really an important thing to consider. Like, what are your customers working with on a daily basis of your services? How important is the website? How important is it that you are actually reachable? So you really need to keep this in mind. And this is also part of your internet security or cybersecurity in that regard.
Yeah, I could give some examples and you can tell me if those are good examples, and maybe you can also add to some of your examples. So it's not only about getting stolen your patents and what you don't want to share with the world, like how do you create the products, how your backend, like how the software is built so that people can copy it. Also, if you cannot use your like software, internal software, for example, for hospitals, it's a big issue. I think if they cannot use their like internal software, they cannot do much, and they are ready to pay ransom, millions and millions. But it could also be in a small scale. You cannot access your Facebook and Instagram, for example, or like any other social media platform, because it has been hacked. And all of us, like, who had experience with support of Facebook or like those big corporations, know that it will take quite some time until you figure it out, if you are able to figure it out. And yeah, imagine if you build your whole business like promoting your products and your expertise on those platforms, and suddenly you are not able to access that. Or even worse, the hacker starts using your social media, for example, in a bad way, starts promoting scam. And imagine like you have 10,000 followers and they all hate you because your page had promoted this scam, and they don't care what happened.
Absolutely. This is actually a few really good examples. Like you already mentioned ransomware. This is one of, maybe it makes sense. I start explaining what are the types of cybersecurity threats out there. Like ransomware is one of them, which I think is these days also one of the most common. So ransomware is you get infected by a software, which is then going on your computer, looking at every document you have, and then it starts encrypting it. And then you want to access it.
So you cannot access it, yeah.
Right. So it's encrypted. It's like the data is still there, but someone put a lock in front of it. But that person, they got the key, quite literally. And then they're like, okay, pay me $500 in Bitcoin, and then you will get the key back.
That would be a cheap offer, probably. So
yeah.
I've read on average, it's like 1.5 million or something that companies, at least the whole, what causes the cost of internet security breaches. So I guess 500 euros, that would be a very humble hacker.
Yeah, well, I mean, the average cost of, or like the impact of a cybersecurity attack, it also includes the loss of revenue and another costs that might occur. So usually the ransomware, because it's widespread, it's like a shotgun. It's aiming at you. It's aiming not specifically at you, but like a broad range of people, of targets. And then they do the math, like, okay, how many people are gonna stick? And usually people get hit who have like their personal computer. They have some pictures on it. They have like videos from their kids playing on your beach vacations 2 years ago. So they are more like, okay, $500, 500 euros. It's worth it. I'm paying it, and hopefully it will be solved and I get my pictures, my precious memories back. So of course, ransomware can also be done on a larger scale. If it's like a targeted attack towards a company, then the ransomware attacks, suddenly they say like, you make like 2 billion a year. So maybe please pay us like 200 millions of worth of Bitcoin.
Really? So much?
Yeah, it's also like a negotiation process. So those targeted attacks, when that happens, you start sending someone and start negotiating, because also the other side wants to make sure that they get the money. They don't know how the attack company's security and procedures are set up. Maybe they can say like, well, you encrypted some data we don't care about. So that can also happen. And if they're waging or gambling too high, the attack company, they might walk away because they're like, okay, not gonna happen. So this is really then a thing which might be happening behind closed doors. No one really knows about it until the next financial records being publicized by the company. It says like a special line on their balance sheet, which might lead to, okay, they paid then 200 million US to those attackers.
Would you say bigger companies are more prepared for this kind of things than maybe medium, small-sized companies?
This is a really tough question. So the history has shown that companies are not usually prepared for this.
Wow, even bigger one.
Even bigger one. And some of them, they only survive because of out of sheer luck. There's one infamous story on the logistic company Maersk. They got hacked back in 2017, around that time, where a few companies got actually hacked by ransomware attacks. And they almost lost all data, and they had one important backup somewhere in Africa where they had a power outage, which was keeping the hackers and attackers from attacking that one backup. And this saved the company.
That's incredible.
This is how the story goes. And this shows, I mean, this is just one example. There was another example, Merck, the pharmaceutical company. They got also hacked. And then they couldn't produce the hepatitis B vaccine for a while. This also happened back in 2017. And it was, I think, also part of the same campaign, NotPetya. So this was a really big one and hit a lot of companies quite off guard.
That sounds like huge costs. It's like tens of millions, maybe even more.
I think Maersk was reporting a loss of 300 million US just to get everything back on track, because they needed to use that backup and set everything back up, and also needed to invest ad hoc to keep the business afloat, because like I said, when an attack happens, it's usually pressing on pause. So they really had to work around all the issues they had, keeping the business going as it was before the attack, and at the same time figuring out how can they recover from it.
Do you think there is also, it's kind of their fault? Could they have prevented that?
I'm not really familiar with the case of Maersk in particular, but and also NotPetya was a huge campaign, a so-called zero-day exploit campaign. This is actually a longer story, and I really need to go into detail. So a zero-day exploit is a vulnerability found in the software where there's no patch for it.
Yeah, patch is a solution, like an update, and they solve those issues.
Yeah, it's like a patch. It's like an update which is fixing that one problem.
Yeah.
And a zero-day exploit means there is a problem out there. Someone discovered it, but it was not the vendor of the software, in that case, Microsoft.
Yeah.
And people came across it and started figuring out, oh, we can use this exploit to infect more computers. And we can use it to build a virus which is spreading itself. So that's why they were actually able to wreak such a chaos across millions of devices, because it was automatically spreading using a few holes which weren't patched because they were completely new. No one knew about this.
And would it be possible to have some backups that wouldn't have those problems? Would that solve an issue? I mean, we will dive deeper into how to avoid such things in general. We cannot like focus on this particular thing. We have to dive very deep into that. But in general, are there solutions that can, even if you cannot prevent, I mean, they were using Microsoft. That's not just some small software solution, and still they were hacked. But other like backup solutions or something like that?
They only survived because there was one part of the company not connected to the internet at the time. So that's kind of a backup solution. You have like all your data copied in a place which is not connected to the internet. So This is called an offsite backup. So this would be one of the things you can do as a business owner, like have a copy of your data and store it somewhere not connected to anything. And then you can, when you lose your data, you can, I know this is my shelf. This is a hard drive. I can use it, and there's all the important data on it. So this is also what basically saved the ass of Maersk's, because they had suddenly an offsite backup, which was not connected because there was no power.
Which other types of risks are there?
So we just briefly touched, on ransomware. There are a few other attacks. One of them is phishing, and one of them is credential stuffing. And I will also go into detail what is what. Let's talk about phishing first, because this is really an interesting case. It happens to, I think everyone has seen it before. You get a text message saying, hey, your delivery is delayed. Please log in here. And then you're like, okay, what delivery? Oh, okay, yeah, I ordered something on Amazon earlier this week. I'm gonna go check it out. What's the issue? And then you click on this really weirdly looking link. It says something with DHL, and you click on it, and then it says like, hey, please enter your Amazon account here. And you're like, oh yeah, I ordered on Amazon. Sure, DHL. You type in your information. Then it says, okay, thank you. And then it's redirecting you to Amazon. And you're like, Okay, what happened? Okay, strange. Seems like it's solved. But what happened is someone was phishing quite literally for your account details of Amazon. This is called a phishing attack. So this is oftentimes, or almost the case, a huge, large-scale attack. So people come across your phone number because it's listed somewhere online, might be on Google Maps, for instance, or might be on your website. So there are people collecting those kind of information details, and then sometimes people buying it and using it for malicious campaigns such a phishing attack, where they start sending out like lots of text messages and begging you to click on the link and asking you for details to some popular service.
Yeah, I think I've seen those kind of emails, and I always check if the domain name is the proper one. Usually it's just a subdomain, but for non-technical people, it's probably difficult to distinguish between domain and subdomain, because as subdomain, it's like you have, for example, google.com. That's the main domain, and or amazon.com, for example. So if you visit this URL, this internet address, then it's the proper one. But if you visit amazon.com web.com, for example, or wix.com, for example, then everyone could create this website, and it's a sure sign that it's not from Amazon, because why would they use some other website, some other domain name? But yeah, it's in the rush, you as an entrepreneur or like busy person, you try to do so many things so fast, and then it's easily, you can get caught.
You're in a rush. You're busy. You're stressed out because you're dealing with some client where things weren't working well, and then you see like, oh, there's a message. I need to act on this. Okay, it says, oh, damn, this is what I wanted to do because I ordered something and now it's nagging me. I forgot to I don't know, pay Amazon, or something went wrong. So you're sometimes, this is how it works, right? So it's not just gullible people who are falling for this.
Yeah, it can happen to many people, to most of the people. And what I wanted to say is, usually you should be careful clicking on links in email. If someone wants you to log in, just go and type amazon.com, google.com, right, instead of just clicking on the link.
Absolutely. This is one point. Never click on the link. If it says like, okay, there's something wrong with your Amazon order, open a new tab on your phone, or open the app on your phone directly, not through the message or anything, or go on your computer, open up a new tab, okay, amazon.com, and then check there.
Even if you look at the from address in the email, it's not safe a way to say, okay, that's from this kind of company. We had cases that spammers were using our domain names. We used to have many domain names, and one of them was really like legal, so justice.eu. And people were sending from this email address spam emails, and police called us, and we said, everyone can use that as a from address. I think there are also you couldn't use that with Google and Amazon. Like there are some safety measures, but for us, we didn't use the domain actively, so we didn't have those safety measures.
Right.
So even you cannot see the problem from the email header, kind of.
Yeah. So this is actually also a really important thing for people who are using their own domain names. Not to go into detail, but just to for the audience that they are aware of this kind of thing. It's called SPF, or Sender Policy Framework, and DKIM, which is mechanisms to make sure that the domain actually says like, okay, there are certain services they are allowed to use your domain name to send emails from.
Yeah, we can provide some information on our website because people heard from the first time, so it's a bit difficult. But if they read it and we will give instructions, then it's easy to set up. It's nothing magical. It's just it's easy to implement, especially if you have some IT people. But as an entrepreneur, you just need to know that there is something like that and that you can use that. And usually like software as a service, they already implement that. Like some providers do that. And you can find out more information about this topic and all others like safety measures on masterful.info/internetsecurity.
On the topic of phishing, because you already mentioned email, which is quite interesting. Actually happened to a friend of ours. Phishing, this is the broad campaign where an adversary tries to get as many victims as possible. There's also like a narrow form of it. It's called spear phishing. You go out as an attacker or like an adversary, and you're like, okay, I'm really interested in this one company because I think they are quite busy and maybe their security is not top notch. I go on LinkedIn, I check what people are working, what positions they are filling in, and then you start like doing some recon work. You're gonna check like, okay, who's working for that company, what positions are filled, and then you start thinking of a campaign to then do a targeted attack. To give a proper example, which is a real world example, unfortunately, and it happened in exactly that capacity. So a friend of us, he was traveling. He announced on LinkedIn that he was traveling that week. So an attacker saw that and he was already prepared. So he knew like, oh, okay, I'm gonna send an email with his name and the from address. And it really looked like it was written from him. It was using a Gmail account. So he was using his first name, last name, and the year of birth. So he created a new Gmail account. And then he was sending to the other managing director at the company, urging like, hey, I'm traveling. As you know, we got this invoice from this company. Please pay them ASAP because this is really important. And they were also referring to a few other things they had released on their press portal because they were going into a cooperation with a foreign company from that country. The other person, also managing director, totally busy because day-to-day action was going wild. Also in between traveling, and was like, oh, okay, yeah, I approve it. And I'm sending it to our accountant so that they can wire the money. Turns out this email was fake. The invoice was legit. So the money was going to a foreign bank. They tried to reach out to the bank. They didn't know what was going on. There was also, of course, a language barrier. Yeah, the money was gone. So they were reaching out also to the police. The police was like, okay, you can file a case, but we are understaffed. We cannot really help you.
Yeah, especially worldwide.
And usually those scams on that scale, they have their network. So the money hits in country A, it goes then to country B, C, D, E, and E. And then from there, it's going to disappear. So that happened. So they were eventually writing off almost €500,000.
Wow. Could you maybe mention a few examples what you could do in order to avoid such things? I mean, in particular, phishing.
What they learned, there are definitely flaws, also in accounting. So it wasn't really internet security in particular. It was more like there was a hole in their process, how they would run their business. So there was someone sending an email and then there was an invoice attached. This was going to accounting. And one of the things they implemented, they were like, okay, if we are traveling and there's an invoice over 250K, we need to be back in the office and sign off in person. So this was one thing they were talking about. And then another thing was like, okay, the account number was clearly it was a bank in a different country. So they enacted a new rule that says like, so usually if you're dealing with international bank transfers, you're dealing with a SWIFT system and you got these IBAN numbers, the international bank account numbers. They all start with a country code. So they got primed and the people got trained on, let's say the invoice says company is in Germany and the IBAN doesn't start with DE, which is the country code for Germany. Put it on hold. Someone has to double check it, what's going on, and approve it. So they were doing things like that. And one thing they also were thinking about is teaching and training all people on all layers. They were going from the management team to the next level and down to everyone, because there was one thing in that one email. I also saw it myself. It didn't mention the company email address anymore. It was a random Gmail address. And there was also a signature. It says sent from my iPhone. And that person doesn't own an iPhone. So they were starting like, okay, there are a few clues. Make sure that it's always following this signature. Make sure that the from address is right. So they were really teaching people like spotting those clues.
Yeah, I can imagine afterwards it's so much easier to recognize those things. But when your boss is like telling you, yeah, do it fast, and you are so busy with 1,000 other projects and deadlines,
oh yeah,
and then you don't question that, and then it's probably a really tough situation with so much money lost. So what are other risks?
So we discussed the ransomware attack where things got encrypted. We discussed phishing and spear phishing where your credentials get stolen. And there's another thing. It's also like the credentials, meaning your email address password combination. Your account or like your credentials might be same over a few services, and one of them gets hacked. So let's say you're using the same password and an email address on Amazon.
That's a very common situation, I think, especially like for solo entrepreneurs.
Yes. They're using the same email address, the same password everywhere. And then not just at Amazon, Facebook, and Google, but also on some random niche company from some foreign country. And they are using the same credentials, which might be fine. But then chances are that one of the companies, let's say Instagram, gets hacked. And suddenly those credentials, they get leaked and they get traded online. And then someone, again, some malicious party, some adversary is having a list full of like password and email combinations. And they know like, okay, everyone is using Amazon, everyone is using PayPal, everyone is using Instagram. And then they start an automated campaign to check, where can I log in with those credentials, and just try their luck. Then this is the typical hack. This is actually 90% of the times when people refer like, oh my God, my Google account got hacked. This is because they used a weak password, the same weak password everywhere with the same email address on every service. And then suddenly that information gets out there, and then someone figures out like, oh, this is still in use, even though that password list is 5 years old. And still I can log in. And then, this is an Instagram account with 100,000 followers or 10,000 followers.
Let's promote Viagra or something like that, no? Or big gambling on this Instagram. Or some fake watches, and suddenly you have a call from thousands unsatisfied clients, and also from the police. Why are you selling fake watches?
Absolutely.
I actually had this kind of situation, not with fake watches, but in the beginning of my entrepreneurial career, I was also using the same or similar passwords for several services. After I met like you, I started doing it differently. Like in 2009, we already get to know each other. But before that, I was using the same. And then some years ago, I wanted to try out PlayStation platform. I had vacation. It was cold. And I was too lazy to write something down. So I was using one of those passwords. Mm-hmm. And then one month later, I saw that my credit card was charged twice, in total like 150, 160 euros.
Wow.
For something gambling related.
Wow.
Yeah, I was surprised. So I had to contact the bank, the PlayStation company, Sony, and figure out. So I spent some time. Luckily, the bank sent me the money back, but still, it's easy also to overlook if you have like so many different charges on your main credit card, and suddenly something small, like decent 100 euros or 70 euros is gone. You might not even recognize that.
Absolutely. yeah, using the same credentials. Let's say, okay, PlayStation Network, it's one case, but let's say PayPal, which is really popular in Europe.
That can be really dangerous.
And like you say, people could use it and approve payments, like really small payments. And usually with PayPal, you get an email. But again, day to day, you're fighting with a lot of things. You're getting lots of emails. Your headspace, you're in a different headspace. You're like, okay, this is like $15. It's some weird company, but yeah, I'm using this service.
Yeah.
It happens on a small scale, and then it adds up, and it's all because you use the credentials over and over again, and it at some point got leaked, and then it's out there.
Yeah, there are even websites where you can check if your email address or it has been leaked. And yes, my old email addresses have been leaked. I saw that. Also, I think a good solution against that, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, is two-factor authentication, where you have to use, if you want to log in, for example, to PayPal, you have to use your smartphone to generate a code. And the people, I think they are annoyed by that because it makes everything much more complicated. And bigger companies, they are forcing that. They don't, sometimes you cannot do it without that. And people are annoyed, but it's actually for their good, because that makes it much, much, much more difficult for hackers.
Yeah, this is a really important point you mentioned. 2FA, or second factor authentication. Like you said, you have like a second factor, which is in most cases your mobile phone, or it can also be like a hardware device. So in some companies, especially bigger companies, they are also making sure that they have one tiny device which is only doing this one job and nothing else. And but what everyone can do, so all of us here, we can go to our Google account, we can set up the second factor authentication. We can do the same for Amazon and also for Instagram. And you have this app on your phone, and every time you want to log in, it asks you like, hey, type in your 6 digits shown on your phone. And then Instagram, in that case, let's go back to them. They know like, okay, they use the password, and they could also provide a correct 6-digit number, which is changing over time mostly, or gets sent to you every time you want to log in. So it's changing. So you cannot guess it. You cannot steal it somewhere and stockpile it. So this is really important. And then they know like, okay, you are the person because you confirmed it with the second factor. And if someone who collected your credentials years ago tries their luck, they get greeted by, hey, type in your 6 digits now. And then they're like, okay, yeah, that's a loss. I'm trying the next account because I'm stuck here. And then they will instantly give up.
So there are different two-factor authentications. One is a special app on your phone, authenticator kind of, and then it generates the code. I prefer those. And the simple one is just getting an SMS, short message, or email. Especially with SMS, it's so scary to lose your phone and then not being able to access all those platforms. If you have like the authenticator, it's much easier like to have two phones with the same authenticator so you can access.
I fully agree. I'm also a huge fan of this authenticator. It's called TOTP. It's a time-based one-time password. So there's one important keyword in it, time. The time on your phone needs to be correct. Because I remember we had one company and we made sure that every employee had to use the second factor to log in. And one person kept on reporting they couldn't log in. So what our team was like, okay, you have to come in, you have to reset the second factor. At some point, it didn't work again. And then we got a little bit suspicious. At some point, it got escalated to me. I was like, okay, this is the only person out of 500 employees who's complaining about not being able to use their second factor. Turns out they were playing around with their phone and disabled automatic time synchronization. Yeah. And the time was off by a few minutes. I was like, okay, please enable automatic time because this generated 6 digits is based on time. So the time has to be correct.
Wow.
They did this and they were so surprised. They were like, wow, this was the fix? Yep. So the second factor, it's quite interesting. It's called TOTP, time-based one-time password. And this is the best method, in my opinion. Like you said, you can share it on multiple phones, so you can have a backup. And compared to having a text message, this phone or device you're using needs to be connected. And usually you have one phone with one number, and you always use one number in your account, so you can't lose it. And then you also lose access to it. So again, this can be also a push on the pause button. But with this TOTP, you only need the time. You don't even need an internet connection. You can also use an old phone, which has no SIM card, no Wi-Fi access, and you can use the app there, and it works as long as the time is correct.
What do you think about if there is an app and you verify with another app with the same smartphone? That's not two-factor, isn't it?
Nope. I mean, it protects you from the credential attack when someone has your email address and password. But if someone possesses your phone, it's a win, because they have access to your credentials most likely, and they can use the second factor on the same device.
It sounds like the smartphone is our kryptonite, because you can get, if you just are able to go inside the phone, which is possible probably, like with the swiping code or like some other security measures, then you have email address, you have all the bankings. Okay, they sometimes like have the fingerprint or like a swiping thing, but still it's so much, like there is so much on stakes.
Absolutely. So your phone is really, like you said, it's the most intimate thing in your life, because it knows all about you. It knows where you're going, what you're doing, with whom you're communicating with, what services you are using, and it gives you access to all of your things, like your bank account and whatnot. So you really have to make sure that your phone, I mean, most of the phones these days, they force you to set up at least a PIN code or the fingerprint mechanism, or I think on Apple you can use the Face ID, where they're using your face basically to make sure that the fingerprint and the face matches, or the face is there and it's you. So this is already a good step forward in the right direction. But this really needs to be communicated to all people, like secure your phone. This is your weakest spot you have. If you lose it, you are done. If someone has access to it, you are done. And this is really a huge financial risk.
And you also always mention I should secure the hard drive on my computer and also on the smartphone. Could you talk about that a little bit?
So this is actually a really important point. If you use a computer, usually nowadays, I think smartphones, as soon as you set up a PIN, I think Apple is really good at this. They automatically encrypt your storage already. So if someone possesses your phone, or let's say someone possesses your notebook, for the sake of simplicity now, there's a password. Okay, you need to type in the password to get access to your notebook. That's fine. But if it's not encrypted, they can, open up your notebook, get out the storage device, like hard disk, like this, or like nowadays SSDs, and put it in a different device. And then they see a second drive popping up, and they're like, oh, cool, click, click. Oh, there's user, click, click. There's the username. Oh, there's documents. Oh, there are all the documents for of his company, and all his maybe copies of his passports, whatever. And this is a jackpot. Also, what else could happen? They could, for instance, you're using your browser. So if they are more highly technically sophisticated, they could reset the password so that they could log into your machine again. They could maybe copy your browser profile on their computer, or start the computer like in a VM, just using the hard drive. And then they see like, oh, I'm still logged in my Google, in my victim's Google account. I'm still logged in on my bank account and stuff, because you're always logged in your browser, right? So that's why make sure that you're not setting a password. Make sure that your operating system on your notebook is supporting full disk encryption, because if then someone is losing, or you are losing your notebook, someone is taking the hard drive and puts it in their computer, they are also getting greeted by, oh yeah, by the way, this is password protected. Please type in the password. And they start guessing, or the system completely denies because it cannot read the content from the disk and says like, I'm getting presented by garbage. What should I do? Should I format the disk and you can use it so that it basically wipes it? This is what I always make sure that people are doing. Encrypt your phone by setting encryption, setting a PIN, encrypt your hard disk on your computer. And then when it gets lost, it's safe, kind of.
And you should make backups in case you lose your laptop or smartphone. You should have some kind of backup, also secured.
Absolutely.
What about Wi-Fi? Could you tell the risks of Wi-Fi? For example, there is the standard PIN code 000, for example. So your home Wi-Fi, but also using Wi-Fi somewhere else.
Oh yeah, this is actually a quite interesting point. Unsecure and open Wi-Fi. In the past, this was an issue. It changed. So why is it an issue? So unencrypted, unprotected Wi-Fi, no password. Also these days, not always, but usually means there's no encryption. So everyone with a special equipment can start seeing what you are actually doing. Like what your computer is communicating with the internet. This got harder and harder over time because I think in 2015 we saw more and more websites were using HTTPS, with the S stands for secure, which translates into this is an encrypted connection. So when there's someone in the middle, they cannot really read anymore what you're doing. And this got also rolled out to anything else these days. So there's not a high chance anymore if you're on some unsecured Wi-Fi, mostly at airports, that you're losing or risking anything. Even though you hear it everywhere because VPN providers, they are fear-mongering. They are saying like, oh, open Wi-Fi is bad, bad, bad. Use a VPN, then everything is encrypted. But maybe this is like 5%, 1% more, which gets encrypted, but that's it.
Yeah, all those banks and important websites like Instagram, social media, and also PayPal, they use HTTPS, so
yes,
you are safe there. But if you go to a smaller website that doesn't use that, and you write some messages, you use in contact form, then scammers are able to read your messages. And I think it probably also improved since GDPR, the data privacy regulation in Europe. They make it mandatory to use HTTPS for if you are providing something like a form or like user interaction.
Right. This has gotten more and more secure over the time. I think even these days, if you go on some website which is using HTTP, Google Chrome starts indicating in your address bar not secure. And then if you're trying to fill out a form, it tells you like, okay, this is really a not wise idea what you're doing here. Technology is advancing. Like you said, regulations are in place which are enforcing transcription, doing transit. That's what this kind of encryption is called, because it's being encrypted while being in transit.
It seems for me that Wi-Fi could also be used for phishing, but probably with HTTPS, it's less of a risk. Or how do you see it?
Back then, like 10, 15 years ago, it was quite popular to set up fake Wi-Fi access points, which were like saying free Wi-Fi, free internet. And then they would start playing your bank's website. And since back then browsers, they weren't fully aware, like, oh, this is a bank website. And usually you visited this website using HTTPS, but this time it's HTTP. So a browser would say like, oh, whatever, it's HTTP. I can speak HTTP, which is unencrypted.
It's a website.
It's a website. So all good here. Nothing to see. And then some adversary set up their access point called free Wi-Fi, trust me, bro. And then they are playing like, hey, I'm your bank. Just type in your credentials here. It will be fine. Eventually, so what the websites usually did, they were unencrypted, playing and pretending. And then they were like saving all the data they are seeing. But they would also speak to the real bank. And there would be, it's called a person in the middle attack. So they would be in the middle of the communication between you and the bank. So they would see like, oh, this is your credentials. Oh, this is your account balance. Oh, you're a a high net worth individual. So maybe you are really interesting. So, yeah, like you said, these days, HTTPS everywhere. Things got more secure. Even a few years ago, open Wi-Fi's, it's not everywhere yet, but even open Wi-Fi's are encrypted. It's a change in the protocol with Wi-Fi, but still, I would argue like most of the open Wi-Fi's, they are unencrypted. So just be careful. If your browser says like it's not secure and you know you're on open Wi-Fi, maybe don't do it. Maybe put it on your to-do list, checking or filling out that form and do it somewhere else. Or use a VPN, but no endorsement.
I'm surprised if I look at our statistics of website visitors, how many different browsers are being used. And I think sometimes people use very outdated browsers and maybe even like Windows XP or something. What do you think about that? Should they update or is it not necessary?
Oh, yes. So let's talk about mitigation. Like you said, update. This is the most important thing. You have to update because in the beginning, I mentioned this term 0-day exploit. When there's an update, it usually not just gives you a new feature, which you like or might not like, but usually it's almost all the time security updates because something was discovered and something needs to be fixed. So this is really top priority. If you see your software says, hey, there's an update, please update me, then do it. Windows is usually nagging you. It's like, hey, if you restart, we are gonna install updates, or even though sometimes it presents you with a question like automatically timing out. Okay, you weren't on your computer. I took the chance and it started applying patches or updating the software. So this is top priority. Whatever you're doing, whatever you're using, make sure that you use the most recent version. Quite an interesting point on a tangent on this one. So the old software you're using, like let's say you're having outdated computer, Windows XP, old browser. Back then, there were lots of security holes in Windows XP. There still are. Windows XP is no longer being updated, so you have to use a modern Windows version. If you were browsing around the internet and you were, let's say, going to one of those infamous streaming websites where you don't have to pay to see your favorite TV series, they cannot really monetize using ads, right? Because it's all a not legal service. So the only option they have, they might work with people who are interested in hacking computers. They might show you your favorite video stream, but at the same time, they are also using your outdated browser to hack you and maybe install ransomware these days, or back then they were just using your computer as a bot. And this would have then been used in another hacking campaigns.
Yeah, like DDoS attack, no? They are using your computer becomes like a zombie and tries to visit certain websites, and if it's done but in a big scale, thousands of computers, then the website is not capable to be is not available, like your online shop, and then they are using ransom, like they ask for ransom, but maybe also maybe like different variations of passwords or something. Is it like this, no?
Yes, right. So a bot, like you said, it's a zombie. It does what it gets told to do, and usually they are being used in the DDoS campaign. DDoS standing for distributed. The distributed, because it's lots of computers and bots which were hacked. And DOS stands for deny of service, because if there are so many people, so many bots trying to access one online shop or doing something, at some point it denies service. So hence the name distributed denial of service.
Could the hacker use your computer for mining cryptocurrency, bitcoins?
Oh yeah. So over the time we saw a change in those things, because it's always like a cat and mice game. Like there someone is doing this, then you're preparing. So someone is attacking you. You see weak spots. You're defending yourself. You're getting stronger. Then they're starting looking for different things. So DDoS, for instance, at some point, websites got protected, usually by Cloudflare, which is a DDoS protection service. So then they're like, okay, so it's no use in doing something like this anymore. Maybe I can use the computer to mine some cryptocurrency. So they are using your electricity, your computing power to gain some money. So there are lots of different things you can do with a botnet. But this is also a different topic, which gets really complicated.
Would you recommend antivirus software?
Yes. Actually, let's talk about the mitigation of how to prevent doing things like this. First, make sure your computer is up to date. Use, I think Windows comes with Windows Defender, which is an antivirus software by Microsoft. I recommend using this. Then, thirdly, don't use your work computer to do illegal streaming. So if you're really inclined doing things like this still for some reason, please get another machine for this. So you have a separation between your business, because this is really important, and your leisure time.
The same is the case for not official Photoshop and other tools. That's a very common problem sometimes, like in certain countries especially.
Absolutely. So this is a big problem. Don't use hacked and cracked software, because you do not know where this is coming from. It might look like you get Photoshop for free, or like the software you need to pay top dollars for free. But then your computer is turning into the next Bitcoin miner, or I don't know.
And your computer is then very slow and very hot and generating so much, like needing so much energy. So computer mining doesn't sound so bad, but it's probably not that good for your computer and for you.
It's using your computer. It's getting slow. It's using your electricity. So you're paying for it, that someone is using your resources. Yeah. And this is actually a mild case, I would argue, because what else could happen? You get ransomware, you lose access to your data, you participate in a botnet, and then something happens with it, and then depends on the nature of what is being done using your computer as part of a botnet. Maybe someday you get visited by the police, and they're like, hey, we know that your computer has been part of a hacking campaign, and we identified your IP address. We know that's your address. We might check your premises. So that happened to an acquaintance of mine. So be careful. So don't do things like this. Make sure your computer is up to date and really separate your things.
Yeah, I got actually sued because my Airbnb guest was using my Wi-Fi for uploading Warner Brothers movies. Like he might not even realize that he was uploading. Usually people just use those P2P networks, and it's like sharing, you consume, and you also like give your computer as a server, kind of as a storage place for those movies. And then I had to pay. It was in Germany, so it's a bit more strict. So I had to pay for the lawyer quite a lot of money, although it was not my fault.
Yeah, exactly. This is also one thing. Yeah, let's focus back on what small business owners could do to make sure that they're safe around the internet, or at least they're doing at least 80% of being safe, because you are never safe. So safety and security, being secure, is not a state, it's a process, which means we were talking about malware, ransomware. Yeah, that you make sure that your computer is up to date. We were talking about phishing, which makes sure that you're sensitive, like seeing and identifying certain kinds of weird attacks, but that you're also setting up the right processes in your companies. And also like training your staff, if you have someone working with you, that you make sure that they are following the same rules and security settings.
Yeah, to this point, we experience an interesting story that our employee from our client was using the same password for the website. And suddenly our website was attacked, and I'm not sure if it was hacked, but it was pretty dangerous. So we secured everything, and we offered, later on, we made it mandatory, but in the beginning we offered two-factor authentication for the website. But he was not using this, and he was using the login data that he used in hacked other websites. So your employees and freelancers especially, they bear quite a risk for your business.
Absolutely. This comes back to lead by example, so that you make sure that you are using two-factor, that you are telling your staff like, hey, listen, you need to use this. Then one recommendation is use a password manager, which is like a neat little notebook where you write down to every service you're using what credentials you were using. So the idea is to have different passwords everywhere and that there's no structure to it. So it's random. So no one can guess by reading the passwords for Instagram and Amazon what your password for your bank is going to be. That's the idea behind random passwords. And then, of course, like which is really important is to have backups.
Yeah.
This is actually the most important thing, I would argue, because it protects you from kind of anything. Having backups, having a copy of your most important documents, having a copy of your customer database, your intellectual property, your designs, ideas, photos, whatnot, schematics of your devices you're building. This is so important that you keep a copy of it, because this not just keeps you safe from ransomware attacks, but also maybe you delete your data or your notebook breaks down and is broken and you cannot access the data anymore. Or maybe your office is burning down because the water kettle was stuck on and you left the building, and then suddenly you come back and everything is on fire. So backups, having not just one backup, but multiple backups in different places is the best insurance against data loss in any kind.
Let's hope our audience will not experience something like that they are hacked or something. But in case they are, what should they do?
So first, calm down. I think this is the most important point. Then it depends on what got hacked. If it's your social media accounts, you definitely need to get access back to it right away. Reach out to the support, provide them documents that you are the person behind this account. So ideally, you're verified so that they have seen your ID card, that they've seen your real name already. In terms of service providers, make sure if you get back access, log in, change the password. And usually those websites, they have the option to see from where you are logged in. So this is called session management. You can go to most websites, they support it. You go to your account and then there's a list of devices. You kick them all out. You make sure that you're unlinking every device. Then you're checking, because most service providers, they allow connecting different apps. I mean, one good example is you can log into websites and service providers using your Google account and Facebook account.
Maybe you should explain what service providers are.
Let's say Zapier, or let's say make.com. Yeah, some software as a service, some website you have to log in. So this is a service provider. Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you can log in, change the password, enable two-factor authentication, because apparently it wasn't enabled in the beginning. See that you kick out all connected accounts, all connected apps, because by this point, when that happens, or has happened that you got hacked, you do not know how you got hacked. So you go in there and you assume that everything is compromised. And then so you try to basically mitigate any further damage, and you try to make sure that any attacker who's in your account gets kicked out right away. And then when this is really the most important thing, and then you can take a rest, drink some coffee, and then go over what has happened, and then try to identify how did it happen to learn from it. So this is category A, some service provider. Category B, social media, same thing here. Mm-hmm. If you get access back to it, change the password, enable two-factor authentication, make sure that all connected apps are disconnected. And I will explain my next point why this is important. And then social media, because then you have to check if and how, what happened, what did they do with your social media account? Did they reach out to your customers? Did they reach out to other clients? Check the inbox, for instance. Did they start sending out messages to other people using your account? Did they start posting? Did they start commenting? Usually Facebook has this activity log you can go into and see what happened. So you can basically understand if has been any damage, any further damage being done.
Sometimes I receive emails that someone tried to log in to one of my website, like one of my social media accounts. Or sometimes I get a message that they had a data leak. Should I do something if I receive this kind of emails?
If a company is reaching out to you and says like, we had a data leak, go change all your passwords. So if you don't know, or if you're not sure if you used for this one company or service provider a unique password, if it's like you being sloppy and you reusing your password again and thinking, I'm using two-factor, so I don't need a unique password. Wrong. You go out now and go to any other service provider you're using and start changing your password. Because in the best case, your service provider being compromised, they're honest and know what happened and can tell like, oh, listen, we got hacked, but your passwords are secure because we have some mechanism in place. In worst case, they're like, oh, we had some incident. We are working on this. Usually this is a huge red flag. So they don't know what happened. They can neither confirm nor deny that your credentials got leaked or your credit card number or whatever got leaked. So this is usually an alarm bell for you where you're like, okay, I know I used this credential on different websites. I need to change just to err on the side of caution, just to be safe.
Speaking of credit card, so there are many online shops and they ask for credit card, but sometimes they also have some other options without leaving the credit card, like Stripe or PayPal. Would you recommend not to leave the credit card and use like third parties so that those shopping shops don't have your credit card?
This is a good point. I mean, credit cards used to be a really interesting goal for any attacker because they could use it, but the worth was declining, so it might not be that attractive to attackers anymore to collect credit card information, but still can happen. What I do recommend, if I see a fishy website or it looks really weird and sloppy,
to leave immediately.
Yeah, either leave immediately, or there are some service providers where you can create throwaway credit card informations, like Revolut is one of those companies. They have those disposable cards. Then there are a few others also for the US and some other jurisdictions. So they would generate a one-time use credit card information, and it's kind of, if they lose this or they store the credit card information and it gets leaked, the bank usually says like, yeah, this card number is expired.
Yeah, that's a good advice. There is one more thing I would like to mention. Maybe you also have some things to talk about. So like WordPress as a website, it's so popular. It's like a third of websites are in WordPress, and it uses so many different plugins, and those two combination makes it really attractive for hackers to try and to find the loopholes in the system. So there is quite some danger, and we have been like using WordPress for a while, so we know the disadvantages and advantages. And if you need a simple website, maybe WordPress is not for you. maybe Wix.com or Squarespace, you can create a nice looking website that is already like in a safe environment that is updated automatically. And if you really need WordPress for some reason, then you have to hire someone who really understands security and make it secure. And you have to be very careful about plugins you are using and templates you are using, because all of those can become a risk. And also you might think like, okay, which kind of risk? You can lose all your rankings in search engine, because if Google sees that there is something about gambling or fake products or some medicaments, it's or links to spammy websites, it can really like block your whole website and remove from the index, because it says like, okay, you are recommending spammy websites or spam websites. And you can lose like image, it can be destroyed. We had some issues with that, so we hired some experts who are very specialized in WordPress security. And since then, it became much easier, but still, we are always on the lookout for updates and for improvements.
Yes, well said. So this is actually circling back to having updates. Also, this applies not just to your computer and your phone, but also to your WordPress installation. Make sure that you really do the update. Also, most hosting providers, they allow you to make backups. So every time you do a big change on your website, and like once in a while, make sure you have a backup of your whole website. Again, this is one of the points we are preaching, backups. Then for WordPress, there are also plugins enabling two-factor authentication, so that you and your team who's working on the website has to use a second factor to log in, which would have prevented in the case we mentioned earlier, where one employee was using a weak and repeated password email combination on the website and somewhere else. And then, the website suddenly got hacked using his account. Another thing you reminded me, speaking about plugins. So the reason why I totally forgot to speak about this a bit earlier, why you go, when you get hacked, you go in and disconnect all your apps and whatever you use on your account, because Google and Facebook, these are two prominent ones, they allow you to log in with your Google and Facebook account to different websites,
yes.
Which is usually not an issue, but sometimes the website, so usually you get greeted, you can click on sign in with Google. The first page you're seeing is your account selection, the overview, usually one account. You then click on it, and then it will ask you, hey, this website would like to, and then there's listed your email address, your name, your profile picture, which is okay, because this is the idea. And then it might also be the case it will ask for more data. So sometimes depends on what the website is actually doing, or the service provider in that case. It might ask to access your Google Drive account or Gmail, reading and writing and sending emails. This is usually a point where I click on cancel, because if I see that I wanted to log in with my Google account to a website, and suddenly it's not just asking for my name, profile picture, and email address, but it starts asking for access to Google Drive, calendar, whatever. Like, why do you need this now? So I go back and say nope, because I'm getting cautious, and I'm alerted that there's something off. So because what happens if you give access to such sites, they might get hacked, and then they can use all those authorized apps and credentials to access, let's say, Google and send Google Mail and send emails, or Facebook. What I've seen before with one sports club I went to, suddenly the Facebook page, they had changed the title, changed the profile picture. Profile picture turned into a picture of a log. The title of the page turned into account security. And then they started posting weird posts like, oh, access to this page has been limited. follow this page, type in your Facebook account. So it turned into a phishing campaign. And later it turned out one of the admins of this page had an app authenticated on Facebook, which had access to all of his Facebook pages.
Wow.
This is circling back to WordPress. Make sure that you only use plugins you really need to use. So don't just go wild and install many plugins.
Yeah, I see like on some platforms where you can buy ready templates like Theme Forest. You can buy templates. Yeah, it looks really nice and you buy it, and on the surface, your website maybe look nice, but underneath it built like a card house kind of thing. Not always. I don't want to discourage you from Theme Forest or something like this, but I had like bad experience with too many different plugins. It makes your website so slow. And you sometimes don't need an extra plugin for certain features. It's easier to adjust in the code, like creating, if you have someone or you can hire someone, he can create a child theme and adjust a few things. It's not much effort if the person knows what he's doing.
Right. These are the most important things, just to wrap it up, the whole episode today. Make sure you're using a password manager. Why? Then you can create for every service and every app you're using your own unique password for each of them. This limits the damage should one of them lose your credentials in the data leak. The second important and also sometimes more important thing is second factor. Make sure you got the Authenticator app installed and have it set up for all the services, allowing you to set up two-factor authentication, because if you lose your credentials and someone will use it, they won't get far. The third important thing is having backups, because usually, the things you have on your computer, in your cloud, wherever, these are the most important things you have: customer databases, documents, contracts, schematics, pictures, whatever your business is. Make sure that this information is stored securely somewhere else, disconnected from the internet. So yeah. These are the top 3 takeaways. And then, of course, everything else, like lead by example. Make sure that everyone else you're working with, they are using the same measures you're using. And speaking of, which we didn't really went into this, every time you hand out credentials because you're working with someone, you have someone in your team working on your websites, whatever, make sure that you keep track whom you're giving access to what and why. When you lose contact with them because they might leave the company, you are unhappy with them, whatever might happen, just, okay, they had access to this website, this thing, then you go and clean up.
Yeah, I think this episode has so much value for our audience. Thank you very much, Christian. Yeah, every case is a little bit different. So if you, our dear audience, need support or consultation, you can reach out to us on masterful.info. We also created a community for entrepreneurs where we can give a lot of value, and also the entrepreneurs themselves will give each other a lot of value. You can reach this community on masterful.info/community. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you and bye. See you next time. Stay safe.